Hello, and welcome to Insiders, a podcast all about the world of television with me, Peter Fincham.
And me, Jimmy Mulville.
This is the podcast for people who love TV and who want to know a bit more about what goes on behind the scenes in show business. Jimmy,
Yes.
on that very point, you're in New York. I know you're in New York, but you just said something that surprised me so much that I feel I should mention on the podcast. You said that the executive producer of Have I Got News for You America has come in early.
Brilliant.
Thank you, James, in order to set you up on this kind of podcast stroke Zoom. And this is obviously a difference between America and Britain. I've never met an executive producer who has any technical knowledge whatsoever, let alone knows how to plug in a microphone or fire up a video link.
Or indeed any knowledge of television sometimes.
But James is clearly the exception to that rule.
He is. And why did he need to come in early this morning to set me up? Because you
wouldn't know how to do it yourself.
Also, I forgot to bring my
your microphone.
We're told by Owen when he's off his meds and he's awake that we should always pack our microphone. We should never leave the house without our microphone. And I did. And I'm here in America, and I panicked last night when I got back to my room. I thought, oh my God, it's the podcast tomorrow, and I haven't got my microphone.
You're vaguely like a young folk singer who's in New York, maybe playing at some cafe in the village, and forgets your guitar. That would be a fat little good, wouldn't it?
That's a very nice analogy, except I can't play the guitar, and I hate folk singing. Anyway, yes, so I'm in America, and it was quite exciting last night because I did get back in time to put CNN on. And
a new mayor,
Tell us about it. Well, he's strolled it. I mean, he's of the left, and of course, Americans are interesting because they say he's a socialist. Some say he's a communist. Here, he'd be in Britain. He'd be kind of maybe centre leftish. But here, the idea of wanting to give any kind of free stuff to the public is seen as being dangerously socialist. Anyway, he's played it brilliantly because he's gone on TikTok, he's gone on Instagram. He's done what Trump's done, but on the left. He's picked big issues. Mind you, we're now turning into the rest is politics. But anyway, it was very exciting to watch it on CNN because when I'm watching CNN, they sometimes advertise, have I got news for you whilst you're watching the show, which is always very exciting.
We need to start our podcast this week with an apology because last week I stated with great confidence, and to be fair, you didn't contradict me.
Unlike you, very, very unlike you.
Exactly.
You're a very sensitive chap.
Excessive confidence. I stated that the former Radio 1 DJ Bruno Brookes was the last person to do an interview with John Lennon before John Lennon was very sadly shot. And I think it's fair to say we had a deluge of messages and emails and texts about this from listeners who pointed out that I was talking through my ass. It was, in fact, Radio 1 DJ Andy Peebles who did the last interview with John Lennon. It wasn't Bruno Brookes.
So the thing that would have been mentioned in Bruno Brookes' obituary, hopefully long into the future, now won't happen. He didn't speak to John Lennon last, because you would have headed up that obituary with that particular fact. Because that's a brilliant fact, is I was the last person to speak to John Lennon. No, you weren't, Bruno. And you didn't even speak to Anne Robinson because you couldn't be bothered to come on her show. So I'm not losing a lot of sleep over that.
Well, let's get on to this. So I know we often talk about the BBC, and our tendency normally when there's a kind of difficult story flying around the BBC is to play it down in a sort of, this is a storm in a teacup way, or this will pass and move on. But I think the story that we have now is difficult for the BBC. I certainly don't think it's over yet. It could grow further, and it could potentially have some big scalps at the BBC. So we should start by saying what it is.
This looks like a story that's going to grow, and it's we're going to call it Trump versus the BBC, but it's the Telegraph have been going really big on a story that claims that Panorama misled viewers by editing a speech by Donald Trump on January the 6th. You may remember the event. He's standing there in front of the White House and he's talking to his supporters and he's not very happy about the result, and he's asking that, Mike Pence should do the right thing and not ratify the election, which is unheard of in American electoral history. The paper says it's seen an internal BBC memo suggesting the program, Panorama, edited two parts of Trump's speech together so he appeared to explicitly encourage the Capitol Hill riots of January 2021. The Panorama episode, Trump, A Second Chance, was broadcast earlier this year, made by October Films. And what happened was, in the speech on the 6th of January, Trump said, "We're going to walk down to the Capitol and we're going to cheer on our brave senators and congressmen and women to do the right thing." However, in Panorama's edit, he was shown saying, "We're going to walk down to the Capitol." There's an edit. And he goes on to say, "And I'll be there with you, and we fight like hell," which clearly has a very different spin of it. Those two sections of the speech that were edited together to appear to be one sentence were in fact 50 minutes apart.
My problem on behalf of the BBC, as a faithful BBC supporter, used to work there, is I think this isn't good. I think this is exactly what the BBC doesn't want people to.
It's an own goal.
Yeah, it's a massive own goal. It's a massive own goal.
It's a shame.
It's hard to believe in the Panorama office, knowing the importance of impartiality, knowing the scrutinies that the BBC's under, that somebody, when signing off this edit, doesn't say, "Did he say that? Did he say it in that sequence that clearly makes it look as if he's inciting his supporters to go to the Capitol and, frankly, commit violence," when he honestly didn't?
No, well, he didn't say that sequence of. He did say those words, but not in that sequence, and that obviously is, in playing into Trump's hand as well. That is fake news, and I think that you're right. It's a shame because the BBC is by far the most impartial purveyor of news probably on the planet, I would think, because I'm sitting in America, and I watch MSNBC, who are of the left. Then I flip to Fox, who are on the right. It's like you're living in two different countries. There are two different narratives being peddled to the American people, and you don't want that. So the BBC, we need to say, gets it right 99% of the time. But when it gets it wrong, boy, do they get the pylon. And I was wondering what kind of meetings Tim Davies is now having, the Director General of the BBC, where, of course, they always go to that place of, we need to have a resignation. Kemi Badenoch, she's come out and said, heads should roll. Boris Johnson's come from under the rock. And he said, yes, people should take responsibility for this, blah, 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 blah. And so there is a general pylon to the BBC. There is
a parallel here with, the incident that led me to leave the BBC when, remind anybody who can't remember that, hopefully most people, we had a documentary about the late Queen. I'll give you the very quick version of this. Yeah. And a sequence was misedited in order to make it look as if she walked out of a photo shoot.
Yes.
So enough of that. But what follows is where there may be a parallel here, because essentially, as happens with scandals, sometimes they're one-day scandals, sometimes two, sometimes they go on to the weekend, because the newspapers of the weekend are always looking for something to fulminate about. But sometimes they start building like a kind of bubble that has got to burst at some point. And the way that the bubble sometimes has to burst is with a resignation or somebody leaving. It can't be somebody kind of in the edit suite. It can't be some junior person just doing what they were told. It's got to be somebody taking responsibility. So you kind of, there are obviously MPs out there who would like Tim Davie to resign, but they've been wanting him to do that for a long time. But let's assume Tim Davie doesn't have to resign here. Start going down the chain of command. I'm saying you don't get very far before you need somebody to leave when something like this has happened.
But similar to your situation where you were a victim of, I guess, there was you trusted RDF to make the film in a responsible way. And Stephen Lambert, who is the incredible producer behind huge hits like Traitors and Celebrity Traitors and all those fantastic shows, but in those days he was kind of creative head of RDF, and he fell on his sword, didn't he? He resigned as his role at RDF. You resigned from the BBC, and that was the end of it as far as the BBC, and they could move on.
Yeah, but there's a central difference here. The BBC weren't in a position to fire Stephen Lambert. As you say, he worked for RDF at the time. That was a matter for RDF. Whereas they were able to pressure me to leave because I was on their payroll. So similarly here, they can censure October films. They can be furious with October films, and maybe they could put enough pressure on them that October films feel that somebody's got to carry the can for this. But it's not within the BBC's power to actually, give somebody from October Films their P45. Whereas it is, of course, in the editorial kind of, chain of command at the BBC. And just sitting here as we are at the moment and, seeing this is spread from the Telegraph to all the other main newspapers. And it's got the usual backbench MPs sort of, flapping their ears and getting huffy about the BBC, saying, let's cancel the licence fee. Have we heard from Nadine Dorries? If we haven't, we surely will.
Any minute now.
I can't remember which. Well, who does she write for these days? I can't remember. But basically, you're going to have a lot. They have got standards at the Beano, to be fair.
They have got standards. Yeah.
So, but I'm kind of guessing, and maybe by the time this podcast goes out, that there's going to have to be somebody's going to have to go. It's bad, I think.
But there's been no statement, I don't think, from the BBC or from October Films yet. Has there?
The BBC, this is a holding statement. I'm not impressed with this. The BBC says, while we don't comment on leaked documents, when the BBC receives feedback, it takes it seriously, considers it carefully. Michael Prescott is a former advisor to a board committee where differing views and opinions of our coverage are routinely discussed and debated. I hate to say it, Jimmy, that's quite pathetic.
I think that was written by ChatGPT, wasn't it? I mean, it feels very
they'd have done better than that. It's so off the shelf. They'll have to.
Yeah, why do they do that? Well, it's the kind of, they improve things worse by doing this kind of thing. And also, it occurred to me that Trump at the moment, they say, the White House will come down heavily. There's an article written about how Trump will want his pound of flesh for this because he's sued ABC for re-editing an interview with Kamala Harris, which made her sound more coherent than she was actually on the night, and they settled for $16 million. But I sat in a restaurant last night with a very good friend of mine here called Val Brown, and she's a real New Yorker. In fact, we sat in a restaurant, and on the other table was Salman Rushdie. And on another table was Graydon Carter, who was the ex-editor of Vanity Fair. It was quite a room, actually.
You are slightly boasting about the life you lead. If I may say, I went to eat Tokyo on Notting Hill Gate last night and got a salmon bento box and came home and watched it in front of the television. I watched your nemesis Liverpool beat Real Madrid.
I don't want to talk about that. But the talk there was of if the Democrats sweep to victory in all these elections, which they did, then Trump's got a much bigger thing, maybe. And so you think, well, I did think, is this the right-wing press just pumping this up into something? And I think that it was a mistake, but people make mistakes. Like we said, that we on a very different level last week, we made a mistake on Have I Got News For You about you and Blair. We apologized. His company came back and said, thank you for the apology. And that was the end of it. But of course, as you say, the Telegraph and the right-wing press have got it in for the BBC and always have had it in for the BBC. And it's a shame that the BBC has done this to itself, or October Films has done it to them.
But there's another dimension to this, which is not good for the BBC, that this guy, Michael Prescott, formerly an independent external advisor to the Broadcast Editorial Guidelines and Standards Committee, bit of a mouthful, not a very sexy title, he left the role in June, and the newspaper said a whistleblower had sent a copy of the 19-page dossier to every member of the BBC last month. Okay, so he left in June and he was saying all this. A whistleblower sent a copy to the BBC board last month. It's now November. We've only just heard about it. So I think the BBC's got something else to answer for there.
That looks bad. Yeah.
That looks bad. They've kind of played dead and hoped nobody noticed. That's they must realise in the modern world you can't do that. It'll catch up with you. And also today, and I think this is significant, the head of Ofcom, Lord Grade, Michael Grade, who, of course, used to be the chair of the BBC, but for a few years now he's been the head of Ofcom. He has told the BBC chairman that he must take seriously allegations of bias, censorship and doctoring uncovered by the Telegraph. I mean, you can't just say, "Oh, we value your feedback, and we're always interested to know what listeners and viewers think." In that bland way, you got to get it. You got to get into this properly.
So the BBC need to staunch the wound in some way, and I've always thought the BBC should really come out more often and say, yes, we do make mistakes. We are an organisation of thousands of people, and we do make mistakes, but by and large, we're a good thing. We get things right, but they don't. They go to a place of self-flagellation, and like you said, you can imagine the meetings that are going on inside the BBC, and I feel sorry for them.
By the time we do this podcast next week, this story will have moved on, resolved itself. I'm suggesting somebody who's currently working at the BBC won't be there by this time next week. But let's be honest, last week I said that Bruno Brookes was the last man to interview John Lennon alive.
Yeah, I know. You are Mr. Fake News. We're now going to talk about this. It's a very fast-growing TV. I'm going to call it a genre, but it's so short. It's a genre. It's microdramas. The microdrama. Do you know what that is, Peter?
Is it a drama about microwaves, like kitchen sink dramas of the 1950s? That's what I'm guessing.
That's a good answer. You're good. Write that down. That's one of your best. No, it's not a microwave.
It's a drama that heats up very quickly and then goes ping at the end.
Yes. And when you put it in your mouth, it gets hotter.
But sometimes with little cold bits in the middle. You have it too soon.
That's definitely on the poster. No, if the micro drama boom has passed you by, here's a quick rundown. They tend to be 1 to 2 minutes long. 1 to 2 minutes long in content. They tend to be quite soapy, with a cliffhanger at the end of every episode. Although how they have the time to build up to a cliffhanger, God only knows. They started in China in 2018, and they were very much targeted at a generation of consumers who were used to getting snack-sized bites of content. But the microdrama industry, just to let you know, Peter, before you start dismissing it as a trend that's going to come and go, it's worth $7 billion in China alone. And in 2024, China's microdrama market surpassed the overall movie box office take in that country. And now, of course, but here's why we're talking about it. The big beasts of American media are now moving in. Fox have taken an equity stake in Holy Water, which is the firm behind the microdrama app. There's an app called My Drama, which has more than 55 million users worldwide, and Disney. And Disney don't usually buy into companies where they think they're not going to make any money.
Jim, before we get carried away with this, and I'm really happy to get carried away, or indeed carried out, wasn't there a thing a few years ago called Quibi? Wasn't that what this is? And didn't it go down like the Titanic with all hands sunk, as it were?
I think it's too soon to start making jokes about the Titanic, Peter. But
or about Quibi.
Quibi, we actually made a show for Quibi. Well, we didn't make it. We were commissioned to make a show. Jed Mercurio was commissioned.
Well, do you know, I was going to say, surely your friend Jed Mercurio, I mean, there's a twist every 2 minutes in his dramas, so you can just slice them up and stick them on these micro drama channels.
I think I'll talk to Jed about this. He'd be probably happier to write 60 episodes of one minute each than
if he's getting a share of the £7 billion Chinese market.
Yeah, but Quibi, you see, let's talk about Quibi. Was an interesting thing because it was fantastically funded. Jeffrey Katzenberg, who's a huge beast on the landscape out in Hollywood, and he convinced Silicon Valley to invest billions and billions and billions because his pitch was, this is for content for people on the move, 7-minute dramas, 7-minute pieces of content for people on the move.
So they were too long.
Well, no, and they launched it the week we went into lockdown for COVID. So people weren't on the move. So I felt sorry for them because, in fact, they didn't get the right environment into which to pitch their new idea. Sure. But the truth is, they spent billions. I mean, Steven Spielberg shot a whole series for them. It was never shown. So that came and went. And of course, but 7 minutes is long form content compared to microdramas. You're talking about blink and you miss it. I mean, I haven't seen one yet. I'm desperate to see one, and I'm sure that that in the UK. I mean, to be honest, broadcasters are getting into these short forms now with blaps. These short form. We get our younger producers are often pitching ideas with young talent to the BBC and Channel 4, who are growing a whole network of younger performers and writers coming into the business via these 2-minute, 5-minute chunks of content. But this is a 1-minute drama. It can't get any shorter, can it? I mean, I can think of some dramas that should have been...
Well, hang on. Having said that, Jimmy, what I was struck by reading about this is you could be describing commercials, because there's an entire industry who have developed a way of telling a story over 30 seconds, 60 seconds, 90 seconds when they're lucky. And so, great commercials are great compressed storytelling.
You're right.
So maybe we need to look to, the way that a great ad hooks you in, introduces characters, tells you something. Maybe that this discipline has been around. It's just been around in a different world.
And also the budgets. I mean, in the US, the budget ranges from 150 to 200,000 for the whole. For 80 minutes worth of episodes, and the shoot tends to last only around 10 days. So it's quite low cost, and they aren't messing around when it comes to marketing it. The titles are very, very over the top. Titles like "The Billionaire Sex Addict and His Therapist."
Okay.
What
happens between them?
Well, I don't know.
Give us a spoiler.
If you've got a minute, I'll tell you. How to
takes a minute.
This is one for you, Peter. I think you'd be interested in this. How to Tame a Silver Fox.
Okay.
And
you're assuming that they're wild in the first place.
And here's a cracker. Here's my favourite. Pregnant by my ex's dad. So that feels like an episode of the Jeremy Kyle Show.
Yeah.
But it is fascinating that we now have a generation of people who don't, like you and I were slightly being facetious about this, and we're kind of saying it's a bit ridiculous. But there's a market there for people who want to have 1 minute worth of drama. Because what they're doing is they're watching that 1 minute, then they're flipping to a different part of TikTok and getting something else.
But I mean, surely we're all from in our generation. Aren't you familiar with the situation where you think, I've got so many things to do here. I've got these emails to write, these messages to reply to, whatever. Then I want to watch that television series, but oh my God, I believe it's just dropped on Netflix and there's 8 hours of it. So when am I going to do that? And so it becomes an almost intimidatingly kind of, large amount of time required. So if your fix in drama was being satisfied in this way, and you can literally blend it in with watching something from the news and what whatever else you might do on TikTok or Facebook or on Instagram or whatever, I guess you can start to see it. But what I would love to do would be to watch some of. I mean, I don't really want to watch about the therapist who's a sex addict. The trouble is, it sounds as if they've all got a bit of a common theme here. But what was the other one? Made pregnant by my ex's dad.
Yes.
I mean,
classy stuff. I mean, it's not adolescence, is it?
No.
But they are actually not limited to that kind of stuff. There's also a micro drama of Pride and Prejudice.
Well, okay. Episode 1, Pride.
Pitch me that. Pitch me, Peter. You're a producer of microdrama. How do you pitch me a 1 minute episode of Pride and Prejudice weekend in a day in, day out?
Well, we all know that the key moment in Pride and Prejudice is when Elizabeth Bennet sees Pemberley and then decides, do you know, I quite like this bloke after all. So I reckon that is basically the scene that you show.
Okay. All right.
Two people at the beginning who don't really like each other because he's rather rude, Darcy. Yeah. Then she goes around Pemberley. Doesn't she? Her parents take her around like a tourist almost.
Yeah.
Look at Pemberley. Then she realises that Darcy owns it. And then they live happily ever after. I reckon you can squeeze that into a couple of minutes.
You've just done it.
I've just done it. If Andrew Davis was adapting it, he'd probably want to add a bit of sex. But it sounds as if that's quite welcome in this world of micro dramas.
I think probably in a few weeks' time, I'll be reading in broadcast that Expectation, run by Peter Fincham and Tim Hinks, has gone massively into microdramas.
Yes.
The Chelsea Detective as a microdrama.
Yes. Dead body, investigation, solution.
There you go.
2 minutes.
And just to round this off, it says that the producers of these kinds of this kind of content, they don't really, the production values, the script and the casting are all secondary. What really matters is it grabs the audience.
I get that. But then what I was saying a few minutes ago about, it sounds a bit like commercials. Yes, it did until you mentioned the budget.
That's a brilliant comparison.
Yeah, but the commercial, you said 150, 200,000. That's, I used to be part of a company that made television commercials. This is back in the 1990s, which with hindsight was a bit of a golden age for television commercials. They'd give you more than that to make a 30-second ad.
Yeah,
I mean, there was money. You didn't know what to spend it on. It was
a gravy train. It was a gravy train.
It was a gravy train. They were so lavishly funded. Whereas here you're talking about making 80 minutes of material for 150, 200,000. Now you could do that, but you're not going to have crowd scenes. You're not going to have, you're not going to have what we would call production value. It's going to be very tightly focused with 2 or 3 characters, probably literally the pregnant girlfriend, her ex-boyfriend, and the boyfriend's dad.
My view is this is brilliant stuff for our industry. That people are always innovating, and that's what keeps us going. Is that, and as we know, with the as we've talked about before, the advent of YouTube, it's blown it all up. You know, who's going to make the opportunities work on YouTube? Well, these guys certainly are.
Here's another idea: micro podcasts. See, we tend to, put a bit of work into it and do 40 minutes, 45 minutes.
You'd hardly get through your first sentence before we'd be off the air.
We could have said, the BBC in trouble, micro dramas on their way, that's it. Bruno Brookes, apologies. Thanks for listening. That would have been a micro podcast.
I'd listen to that.
Owen, can you give us a very harsh edit this week? We've got one more thing to talk about. Oh my God. Okay. Sorry, this means it's not a micro podcast. It's turning quite macro.
Yeah.
But it's kind of interesting. I think it's interesting. So Kim Kardashian is starring of a new legal drama for Disney Plus called All's Fair. She plays divorce lawyer Alira Grant, who's part of an all-female legal firm who helped the women of California get the settlements they deserve. Possibly Meghan Markle might become a client at some point in the future.
Yeah. Season 3.
Look, this is created by Ryan Murphy. He's a television legend. He was behind Nip Tuck, American Horror Story, Glee. That's a remarkable career. And we're never here. We're not here to review programs. We're never here to. We wish all creators well, but he's had some fairly stinky reviews for this. Ben Dowell in the Times says this may well be the worst television drama ever made. Ed Parent, The Telegraph. Kim Kardashian's new legal drama is a crime against television. Lucy Mangan in The Guardian. I didn't know it was still possible to make television this bad.
Oh, stick around, Lucy.
I've got 2 questions, and I want to know what you think about this, Jim.
Yeah.
One is. Do viewers care? I mean, maybe a lot of people are watching this. And 2 is, how can it be that you can make Glee, Nip Tuck, American Horror Story, and then get it so wrong? I mean, I haven't seen it, assuming it is so wrong. Ryan Murphy, he signed an exclusive 5-year deal with Netflix in 2018 worth $300 million.
Yeah, well,
he's a bit like Shonda Rhimes in this sense.
Yeah, but
now he signed a new one with Disney Plus. Are they thinking, what have we paid for? Or are they just looking at the viewer numbers and thinking, who cares about reviewers? Critics don't matter like they used to. What does this tell us about the modern world?
Well, we could get into a whole conversation about the value of TV critics versus the value of theatre critics. So the theatre critic can close a show down.
Yes.
Because the theatre-going public tend to read legacy media outlets and they go to newspapers. But, TV...
And they've got to hand over money to watch the show. Yeah. Whereas if you've got your subscription to Disney...
Correct.
It doesn't make
it's
any
less
difference.
of a commitment, yes.
Yeah.
So I think these are pretty horrible reviews for All's Fair. And now, when they dropped the trailer for All's Fair, I know because somebody in my office said, have you seen this trailer for All's Fair? And I watched it. 44 million people viewed it. in 24 hours. So clearly there was interest in that because of Kim Kardashian. I mean, Kim Kardashian is a force of nature on her socials. I mean, her social media profile is huge. So I think Disney have thought she has tens of millions of people following her online, put her in a TV show, they'll come and follow her. We don't give a shit about what reviewers say. And they put in brilliant actors like Glenn Close alongside her. And I think that Glenn Close, in some reviews, says that she's gone down with the sinking ship. But I don't know. I think that, snooty reviews from The Guardian and The Times and other, kind of highfalutin organs, I don't think it will affect the audience that want to watch Kim Kardashian strut her stuff in a sexy legal drama about women sticking it to men.
I mean, the truth is, as television producers, we hate bad reviews and we want fair reviews. Yes. As readers, we know fair isn't really what you want to read. You either want to read a rave or you want to read the exact opposite. And actually, as a TV critic, it's much easier to write one at the extreme. It's much easier to fulminate against a bad program or celebrate a great program. And to write a carefully balanced, in inverted commas, fair review takes a lot more work.
My interest is piqued. If it's that bad, I want to watch it.
You're going to watch it?
So I want to watch the...
Tell you what, Jim, you watch that. And I'll watch a couple of micro dramas because I'm busy over the next week.
And then next week we'll compare notes.
But the truth of the matter is, as we sit here, one, we wouldn't say no to a $300 million 5-year net deal with Netflix. And two, we wouldn't say no to a slice of the $7 billion that the Chinese market for micro dramas are worth. So maybe we need to think, and maybe other listeners who are
you in some financial trouble, Peter? Are you in a bit of financial trouble?
I'm saying maybe as with all things in life, we want to turn these things into opportunities.
Of course you do.
Let's go out there and make some abominably shit drama or some dramas that start and finish within 2 minutes.
I think it's absolutely guaranteed that at some stage we'll make abominably shit drama.
Let's lower our standards in pursuit of great riches.
And on that hopeful note to the creative community, we wish you well. Don't give a damn about the quality, just make the dosh. You heard it from Peter Fincham, not from me. I don't subscribe to that kind of... I'm all about the quality.
Jimmy's on the high ground.
Next week, we are in Belfast, one of my favourite cities, and we are going to do our podcast from the Belfast Media Festival.
Yes. Well, we're excited about that, aren't we? We're travelling.
We are very excited.
We've got
they're a good crowd.
We have our very own regional policy, and this is the beginning of it.
Well, it could be the beginning of a world tour.
Thanks for listening this week. If there are any questions about the world of television you've always wanted to ask, send them our way. We'd love to hear from you, although, as you found out this week, we're not necessarily correct in our answers.
No, we can't guarantee the veracity of what Peter says. You can send us an email, however, or get in touch with us via our socials. All the info is in the description.
Even better yet, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thanks for listening. And if you've enjoyed the show, do follow Insiders the TV podcast wherever you get your podcasts.